everyone's freaking out. There's hysteria and panic running amok on the streets of YouTube, and it's not necessarily an overreaction. Things are getting really stupid over here. YouTube spent the whole year making unpopular decisions that, up till now, were pretty easy to live with, particularly if you just browse YouTube and don't really engage in the community level stuff. But their latest move is something that will affect everyone, including you. If you are watching this video, then this is going to change the kind of content that you will be able to see in the future. In a nutshell, networked YouTube channels are now subject to the same content ID notices and monetization reviews that unnetworked channels have been subjected to for years, effectively taking away one of the major benefits of being with a network and subjecting them to a glitchy, buggy, automated system that deprives channels of revenue while it makes mistakes about how those channels can use copyrighted content. Unlike changing the channel layouts or the comment system or forcing Google Plus onto its users, this change actually affects the site's economy by decreasing the revenue of virtually everyone involved in it. And the lead up to these changes and their overarching effects are so convoluted that I don't even know where to begin. But I guess it makes sense to give the situation some historical context first. In the year 2007, the housing bubble burst and Microsoft released a failed operating system, and Viacom sued YouTube for $1 billion on the grounds of copyright infringement. They alleged that the site was promoting and distributing massive amounts of pirated content. Eventually, YouTube won a dismissal thanks to the safe harbor provision of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which gives service providers protection from copyright infringement liability. But Viacom has since appealed that dismissal and has kept the case going up until April of this year, in which case YouTube won yet again on the same grounds of being a safe harbor of a service provider. And that process of turning YouTube into a legitimate service provider for other legitimate businesses is how they managed to get the legal protection to win the lawsuit. During that case, YouTube rolled out two really important features in that same year that helped their defense. Those two features are the YouTube Partnership Program and the Content ID system, which together are supposed to police copyrighted content away from YouTube while encouraging YouTube to develop its own legitimate original content. The Content ID system is an automated bot that scans the visuals and sounds of copyrighted content that users can register into its system, and then it automatically scans other YouTube videos for sights and sounds that are similar to those that are registered in it. If it sees a match, it sends out a notice and disables monetization for the uploader while the two parties sort out the legitimacy of the match and the content's usage.
It's like 36,000 people staring, without blinking, at 36,000 monitors, all day, every day.
The kicker is that during that period of dispute, whoever registered the content into the system has the option to take all of the video's ad revenue, regardless of whether or not they win that dispute later on. As for the YouTube Partnership Program, it started out as a way to enable monetization for only the most popular of YouTube's channels. And as a response to that exclusivity, companies formed multi-channel networks, which were given some leeway with the YouTube Content Management interface to allow similar channels to monetize their videos like the bigger ones could do under the Partnership Program. It was around 2009 that you saw the creation of less specialized networks, who would level the playing field for those top-tier monetization features for smaller or newer channels. And as a result, we got an explosion of popular new faces and companies who might as well now be considered part of the gaming media. YouTube is actually really leery about being liable for users that might be monetizing content that might be someone else's work. So the idea is that they pass some of that liability off to the multi-channel networks, who are then supposed to take responsibility and police themselves for dubious content. And this enables people to monetize gameplay footage, which is something that YouTube has typically disallowed over the years. See, determining who owns the rights to gameplay footage is a really new legal issue that, to the best of my knowledge, has no precedent or statute to fall on. Unlike movies or songs, games are an interactive medium. Companies definitely own the individual aesthetic assets like the music, textures, characters, and the code behind it all, and the cutscenes, and even the ideas that make the mechanics of the game work. But an actual video recording of a game is a transformative work, which is a typical defense for fair use cases. If you're distributing footage of you playing a game, and especially if you're commentating over it, you're distributing something that the company is not. It's not the same to watch a video of a game as it is to play it for yourself. Video games are meant to be played, not watched, so the typical presumption by both YouTubers and the game industry is that most long-form commentated Let's Play gameplay videos are giving game companies free advertising and not pirating their product. The problem is that there are no cases or laws agreeing with them, because those don't exist yet. So basically, the situation you had going on was one where the multi-channel networks were monetizing content that YouTube didn't want to risk monetizing for themselves. They would take a cut of their channel's ad revenue, and in return, they'd also provide services like music and promotion. So the channels are driving traffic to YouTube sites and YouTube's ads. They are making money on their own ads. The network is taking a cut of that ad revenue, and game developers are also enjoying increased exposure to their games by being on all these popular YouTube channels. Everyone's making money. Everyone's happy, right? Wrong. One of the ideas behind a network is to police its own content where YouTube can't afford to. And one thing that I fail to hear people consider is that the networks are not doing that. Over the past few years, admission standards to machinima have grown increasingly lax, and the game station ended up creating RPM as an offshoot of itself for even smaller channels. Around the time Bunnyhop got into RPM and then graduated to Polaris, which is what the game station is calling itself nowadays, RPM lowered its view per month requirement to 0, meaning that any channel that literally nobody watches was eligible to instantly monetize its content, whatever that may be. So previously, someone with 0 views could just join RPM, upload Family Guy, and just change the pitch of the audio or mirror flip the video and pocket the change of the views that gets before it could get manually shut down by an actual human being. And that is not how multi-channel networks are supposed to work. And that is one of the biggest reasons why I suspect YouTube has actually flipped this switch. And it's not that they're being kind about it or communicating with the channels in an acceptable way, that's just a hunch that I have. And in the wake of them flipping the switch, I've been seeing a lot of reactionary misinformation about how this system works and who exactly is to blame here. This isn't just about the corporate greed of YouTube itself. YouTube has Viacom breathing down their necks, and without the systems in place that are causing everyone so many headaches, the whole website is an even bigger lawsuit just waiting to happen. And the low standards of the networks have basically turned it into a website without those protective systems. This also isn't about game publishers being dicks and trying to censor the media. Blizzard, Capcom, Codemasters, Epic, Deep Silver, Ubisoft, and even Nintendo have all released statements and instructions in support of YouTubers. The game industry likes YouTube better than the other entertainment industries, and the only reason why a developer wouldn't want this kind of exposure is if the game already sucks. This also isn't about exploited, victimized game companies trying to shut down Let's Players and take a much-deserved slice of their lucrative Let's Play pie. This affects any and all formats of game videos, including journalistic content. The reviews and editorials that I do are no exception. They're vulnerable to the same system. By their nature, any gaming videos are derivative works that talk about, joke about, discuss, or otherwise create content from previously existing content. And judging by the numbers I see, only a minuscule minority of Let's Players can actually afford to live off this stuff. What the panic and hysteria is about is how the Content ID system delivers horribly inaccurate and misinformed results. The Content ID system is prone to technological errors. Sometimes it can't tell the difference between two entirely different pieces of work. Here's one guy who got a notice because his Rule of Rose LP apparently had a copyrighted rain sound effect in it, even though the sound effect the game was using was entirely different than the one that the Content ID was matching it with. So the sound that rain makes is somewhere out there in the Content ID system, and it's making matches based off that. And the sound that rain makes is such a flat, almost staticky noise that you hear in nature, you hear it everywhere, and it's making matches based off that. I just got a great idea. Items not eligible for copyright protection include facts or works consisting entirely of information that is common property and containing no original authorship. Huh. See, this issue with the rain sound effect perfectly illustrates what's wrong with the system even when companies use it legitimately as intended. Because the actual sound effect floating around in the Content ID system probably isn't just some guy holding a microphone up to a window on a rainy day. You can't do that. The sound that rain makes is common property. It occurs in nature. It has no original author. You are not allowed to copyright it. But it is probably instead a high-quality Foley recording made from instruments designed to simulate the sound of rain. And you can copyright that, and they don't want people pirating that, which is totally fair. The only problem is that the sound of rain is so common in the world that there's probably no way that the robot is going to be able to tell the difference between that rain sound effect and some other rain sound effect that people don't want Content ID matching on other people's videos. Every time the robot makes that mistake, people are going to lose money. So imagine if Siri or autocorrect charged you $20 every time it made a mistake. It's kind of like that. The Content ID system is unaware of the context in which copyrighted content is used. Videos that were licensed or contracted to use copyrighted material get the same notice that actual pirates do. Reviews and commentary protected by fair use gets that same notice. Even if you use royalty-free music tracks that were licensed from a third-party library for you to use, you'll still get that same notice. Using promotional material like trailers and commercials freely provided to the public will still get you flagged. Hell, you can even create your own game and make your own trailer for it, and after getting ready to sell it and having your distributor add it to the Content ID system, you'll get that same exact notice. The Content ID system assumes channels are guilty until proven innocent. It puts the burden of proof on the channel, not the content holder, and it assumes hostility on the part of the content holder. Once the channel disputes the claim, the other party has a 30-day deadline to respond, and during that whole time, monetization is turned off, and even if the channel wins the dispute, then the channel will not get reimbursed for that lost revenue. Since videos make most of their revenue during the first 4 days, you basically gotta cross your fingers and hope that Content ID doesn't match your stuff up with somebody else's before that initial spike is over. The Content ID system also wastes people's time. Time is money, and now that people involved in a game's development, music, distribution, and media coverage all have to send email exchanges to one another and clean up Content ID claims for every single YouTube review of any one of their games, that's gonna waste a lot of people's time. That might sound far-fetched and silly, but that happened to me last Wednesday. The Content ID system also limits the public's freedom of expression. It allows companies to directly, financially hurt the media and silence critical opinions. Using game footage to illustrate the points in a review is something that's been common practice since the days X-Play was on Tech TV. Since the days of gaming in the Clinton years. This is just the accepted format of how this review is supposed to work. But the way the system is intended to work is that I'm supposed to ask permission from the game developers to make that kind of review. Think about that for a second. I'm supposed to ask permission before I'm allowed to review a game. The Content ID system is also vulnerable to fraud and copyright trolling. You're not supposed to register content into the system unless you have exclusive rights to claim it, but companies that don't are still doing that, either because they don't understand how the system works or they're just out to make a quick buck off someone else's work, which is exactly what the system is supposed to protect people from. That might sound far-fetched and silly, but that's happening right now. While I'm writing this, it looks like two companies, End Music and TuneCore, who are somehow affiliated with one another, have seemingly gone rogue and are claiming the ad revenue of VVV videos that were made by the original creators of the game and its soundtrack. And they're doing it without either of those guys' permission, and they're not answering either of their questions because collecting revenues from the original copyright owner's work is their job, even if they're collecting it from the original copyright owners themselves. You know, Bunnyhop is not a Let's Play channel, and I feel that the fans of this channel need to know that. There are some Let's Play style videos on here, but that's not primarily what I do. It's not the center of attention here. Instead, the bread and butter of this channel is a review series called Critical Close-Up, and those are as far away from Let's Plays as you can go. They take a lot of time to put together. I juggle this whole Bunnyhop thing on top of a job, sometimes 2 jobs, and I simply can't afford to put out these reviews as fast as people want me to because they take up an incredible amount of time. And Bunnyhop's not my primary source of income. If it was, I'd be screwed. It probably never will be. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that if this whole content ID thing gets to a point where I can actually end up spending 80 hours of my life between 2 months putting together a beautiful 45-minute critical close-up review of something that I actually love, only to see all that effort go to waste because of a faulty content ID claim, that's when I'm going to start to see diminishing returns from this whole Bunnyhop thing. That may sound silly and far-fetched, but that's actually what happened.